This video was brought to you by BetterHelp. Do you ever feel like you have no control over your life? Like you're a plastic bag blowing in the wind? A puppet with strings wielded by an unbathed John Cusack? Like a strange fungus has wormed its way into your brain, and now you have an uncontrollable desire to eat Pedro Pascal's face? Do you wake up in a cold sweat with a frantic primal urge to leap from your bed, strike a power pose, and belt out? Shake it off, shake it off. In short, are you a victim of mind control? You sure are, at least according to the nearly 20% of Americans who now believe that 2023 Time Person of the Year, Karma Enthusiast, Karma's a relaxing thought, and controversial NFL patron Taylor Swift is a secret psyop being weaponized by the deep state to brainwash all of us. This rumor gained heat around the Super Bowl, when Swift's beau Travis Kelce led his team to victory. Confronted with these telegenic lovebirds, one former Republican presidential candidate warned that they would be used to sway the presidential election. Note that Swift did endorse Biden in October 2020. Conspiracy frenzy swelled in March when Swift appealed to fans to get out there and vote for the candidates who most represent you. It's tempting to laugh off a deep state conspiracy theory about a pop icon, but it's more interesting to ask, why is the idea of Taylor Swift being used as a propaganda tool so compelling? Does it say something about the way we relate to entertainment and celebrity? And does this distract us from the bigger picture about how pop culture actually affects our political and personal lives? But before we go on, we want to thank this video's sponsor, BetterHelp. If you've experienced anxiety or depression, or just generally felt overwhelmed lately, BetterHelp is a resource that can help you feel better. I've been going to therapy for the past 5 years, and I can tell you that nothing has made a bigger difference in my mental health. BetterHelp's network of more than 30,000 therapists are ready to listen to and help you. After taking a brief questionnaire, you'll be matched with a therapist whose expertise fits your unique needs. And thanks to BetterHelp's remote model, you can work with a therapist whose skills might not otherwise be available in your area. You can message your therapist at any time, and you'll receive timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule your choice of phone or video sessions to receive counseling in real time. And in the event that you and your therapist aren't a perfect match, you can easily switch to a new one for no additional charge. So join the more than 2 million people who have taken charge of their mental health with BetterHelp by visiting betterhelp.com/wisecrack or just click the link in the video description. When you do, you'll get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/wisecrack. And now, back to the show. The main reason this conspiracy is so believable is because there's a long history of the American government using pop culture to change minds. Over the year, it's ranged from Daffy Duck facing off against Hitler to Katy Perry getting over a tough breakup by joining the Marines? I don't know, last time I had a tough breakup, I just camped out on a goat farm for 6 weeks and talked to no one at all. It was very relaxing. Propaganda reaches peak intensity during times of war. World War I saw the creation of the Committee on Public Information, which hired creatives to blanket America in pro-war posters, films, newspaper articles, toys, and so on. Charlie Chaplin even made an upbeat comedy about trench warfare, in which he walks into enemy territory disguised as a tree. I think I just found my next Halloween costume. During World War II, mobilization intensified as the government's new propaganda agency pressured Hollywood to support the Allies' efforts. The agency directly interfered with films, sitting in on story conferences, editing screenplays, pressuring studios to scrap objectionable flicks, and penning dialogue for important scenes. The number one question a filmmaker needed to ask themselves, according to a government manual, was, will this picture help win the war? Apparently, Popeye fending off Nazis while attempting to deliver spinach to British soldiers fit the bill just fine. The highest-grossing film of 1941, Sergeant York, depicts a farmer struggling to decide whether fighting in the war conflicts with his religious beliefs. Can you guess what he decides?
Sergeant York, as Commander-in-Chief of the American Expeditionary Forces, it is my pleasure to confer upon you the United States Congressional Medal of Honor.
Meanwhile, the National Wartime Music Committee produced fun tunes like A Bombing We Will Go, Right Over Tokyo. Wow. The Cold War was another boom time for propaganda. One film about Soviet espionage was actually based on a Reader's Digest article by none other than FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover. The CIA covertly purchased the film rights to George Orwell's Animal Farm and rewrote the story to be staunchly anti-communist in hopes of inspiring Soviet satellite states to revolt. Meanwhile, the US State Department sent black jazz musicians on European tours to combat international outrage about American racism. Today, everyone from the Army to the Coast Guard to the Secret Service has film and TV offices, or official media consultants. The CIA has advised on everything from Charlie Wilson's War, in which they deleted scenes that depicted Soviets favorably, to Meet the Parents.
I have nipples, Greg. Could you milk me?
The Clinton administration offered enormous financial incentives to TV networks to shoehorn anti-drug messages into primetime shows ranging from Smart Guy to Beverly Hills 90210.
Kelly, where are my pills?
The Pentagon famously offers movies like Iron Man and Captain Marvel, or filmmakers like Michael Bay, access to military equipment and infrastructure in exchange for approval over screenplays. Propaganda scholar Matthew Alford estimates that the Department of Defense supported around 1,900 movies and TV episodes between 1911 and 2017, ranging from Birth of a Nation to Mission Impossible 7. And after 9/11, Bush advisor Karl Rove met with Hollywood's biggest players to establish an arts and entertainment task force to promote the war on terror. Clearly, the US government and military apparatus has long known the power of pop culture, both domestically and abroad. But this doesn't explain why some people believe Taylor Swift is the latest cog in their propaganda machine. But what if we're focusing on the wrong thing when we talk about the explicit use of entertainment for propaganda? In other words, what if governmental use of celebrities to change hearts and minds is less the disease and more a symptom of something bigger? To answer that, we can refer to our old buddy, Theodor Adorno. In the 1940s, Adorno and Max Horkheimer offered a still relevant critique of what they dubbed the culture industry. The argument is, under the capitalist production model, art becomes another commodity like toothpaste or lava lamps. To that end, Adorno critiques the assembly line character of the culture industry, the synthetic, planned method of turning out its products. Turning art into just another product has consequences. As Adorno writes, the entire practice of the culture industry transfers the profit motive naked onto cultural forms. Like any other commodity, art thus matters only in its ability to attract the purchasing power of consumers, making it well suited to advertising. As scholar Shane Gunster explains, culture is made specifically for the purpose of being sold. Production is subordinated to distribution, and the promise of art is thereby dissolved. It's like how Pretty Woman was intended to be a gritty film about the difficult realities of sex work, but after test audiences reacted poorly, got turned into this.
So what happened after he climbed up the tower and rescued her?
She rescues him right back.
So what meaning does culture convey when it's robbed of its artistic depth? As philosopher Charles A. Prusik summarizes, mass cultural production stamps the coercive form of monopoly capital on the foreheads of the consumers. In other words, when art is valued for its ability to be sold, the creation of that art becomes just a means to the end of getting us to spend money. Which is why a lovable alien once shared top billing with a certain popular multicolored chocolate candy. Viewed this way, the reality is that a work of art may be less persuasive for its overt political overtones than for what its existence, and our consumption of it, represents about our world. Consider Barbie, which was lauded by critics and fans for promoting feminism and critiquing the doll's parent company, which was earning 5% of the film's $1.5 billion box office revenue. But, seen through Adorno's lens, the film's real purpose was underscored by its unprecedented marketing campaign. We saw the whole world painted pink via partnerships with everyone from Xbox to Airbnb to Flow from Progressive. Merch ranged from pink Crocs to pink Polaroid cameras to pink ketchup to pink lemonade. That last one makes sense. But what of the film's subversive elements? Well, they rendered Barbie palatable to more progressive young people, almost rehabilitating the doll's long-standing image as a capitalist shill encouraging anorexia.
And until you showed up here and declared yourself Barbie, I hadn't thought about you in years, you fascist.
In this way, as journalist Alison Wilmore writes, it's not a rebuke of corporatized feminism so much as an update. The trouble with trying to sneak subversive ideas into a project so inherently compromised is that you might just create a new way for a brand to sell itself. It's not surprising that a film based on a commodity underscores the extent to which the culture industry manufactures commodities whose main purpose is to be sold. Nor is it surprising that the main takeaway many had about the film was that it demonstrated the exciting potential of female purchasing power. And if there's one thing I love about myself, it's my purchasing power. Which brings us back to another famous blonde marketing genius. Despite her unprecedented fame, Swift continues to produce music that inhabits an intimate world of eternal girlhood, complete with insecurities, heartbreak, and bursts of self-actualization. But that innocence belies the shrewd billion-dollar business behind the Polaroids and diaries, one where a song about a cardigan becomes an opportunity to sell thousands of cardigans, a move that underscores the song's role as a commodity. It's common amongst fans to refer to Swift as a capitalist queen. That's not least because of stunts like selling $60 snake rings to fans with the promise it will increase their chances of landing a coveted concert ticket. Or her 200 US trademark registrations, including phrases like, "this sick beat," "player's gonna play," and even her cat's name, Meredith.
What advice would you give to anyone who wants to become a singer?
Get a good lawyer.
And look, no hate for Taylor Swift here. I respect her as a business. I want her to teach me a class in entrepreneurship. Taylor, if you're watching, please give me stock market advice. Swift's ability to navigate both her evolving artistic voice and dynamic public persona to massive profits leads scholar Annalot Prinz to call her a neoliberal heroine. In lyrics, interviews, and on social media, Swift promotes what Prinz calls rhetorics that invoke individualist empowerment, resilience, and success.
Female artists in music have dominated this decade in growth, streaming, record and ticket sales, and critical acclaim. So why are we doing so well? Because we have to grow fast. We have to work this hard. We have to prove that we deserve this, and we have to top our last achievements. And it seems that my fellow female artists have taken this challenge and they have accepted it. It seems like the pressure that could have crushed us made us into diamonds instead. And what didn't kill us actually did make us stronger.
Lyrics variously celebrate hard work,
Have never been a natural. All I do is try.
or affirm her self-worth.
So don't you worry your pretty little mind. People throw rocks at things that shine.
Her ethos is particularly appealing to female millennial and Gen Z fans navigating the twin struggles of economic insecurity and sexism. In The Man, she sings,
Wondering if I'd get there quicker if I was a man.
Here, while acknowledging the uphill battle of womanhood, she highlights an awareness of her own power. After a public scandal, Swift responded by savvily reinventing herself as a tongue-in-cheek queen of vengeance, asserting her unbreakability with lines like,
Honey, I rose up from the dead. I do it all the time.
By turning personal turmoil into triumph, she spun what she says once seemed like the end of her career into a reaffirmation of her supreme relevance.
Something tells me that's planned.
Nope, that was spontaneous. I'm a very spontaneous person.
Her ability to exhibit what scholar Miriam A. Rahali calls characteristics of independence, self-actualization, and self-reinvention conveys an advanced self-governing rhetoric and adaptability to market changes and neoliberal logic. Indeed, her talent for reinvention has become its own potent currency in her hugely popular billion-dollar-plus Eras tour, which celebrates each phase of her career. Viewed through Adorno's lens, the Barbie and Swift empires don't merely entertain. Rather, their uber commodity status and implicit messaging assume and thus reinforce the logic of neoliberalism. It's what Adorno calls the automatic self-reproduction of the status quo in its established forms. Swift thus doesn't need to insert covert, mind-warping messages into her music videos to be implicitly aligned with a political project. And the implicit neoliberal logic of the Swift industry isn't that subtle. When the rights to her music were acquired by longtime nemesis Scooter Braun, she savvily decided to get revenge by re-recording them to reclaim her IP rights. She faithfully reproduced the original versions, added some bonus tracks, and despite being essentially the same product, resold them to eager fans. Late last year, one of these albums, 1989, Taylor's version, accounted for nearly half of all record sales in the US. Now, this is complicated, because on one hand, by reclaiming her art, Swift is subverting the precise logic by which one person's creation becomes another's replicable commodity. However, in selling nearly the same thing to fans who likely already own it, the value of a Taylor's version album transcends its status as mere commodity. The commodity's meaning becomes the product, and the consumption of it becomes a gesture of support for Swift. The not particularly political act of contributing to a very wealthy artist's bank account is thus imbued with profound political meaning. In her Time magazine interview, Swift says as much, explaining her own success in terms of broader female empowerment. Feminine ideas becoming lucrative means that more female art will get made. It's extremely heartening. In a similar vein, when Barbie starts being associated with feminism or anti-capitalism, those ideals are reduced to a product, and contributing to the movie's profits is elevated to a form of activism. Under this ideology, consumption feels like a radical act. This is why we think the new conspiracy theory about Taylor Swift being a psyop is, despite being absurd, actually understandable. The massive weight of Swift's cultural power, her uncanny ability to populate ever more headlines, Instagram posts, and radio hours each day, is almost scary to contemplate. They're not wrong that Swift embodies the sheer force of the culture industry to infiltrate our interior worlds, whether we want it to or not. They're just wrong that she needs to collaborate with the Pentagon to wield her influence. Because the most effective way to weaponize culture isn't through explicit political statements, but through good, old-fashioned, emotive entertainment. Those best at weaponizing culture culture throughout history knew as much. Captain of Hollywood censorship Will Hayes noted, in Cold War paranoid fashion, that the people of this country must have their amusement or the country will go red. Thank God Hayes didn't live to see Taylor's red era. Entertainment's ability to persuade is strongest not when it tells us what to believe, but when it appeals to our hearts. Consider shows like CSI, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Law & Order, which take us into the interior worlds of law enforcement officers. They don't lecture the audience like a public safety announcement from World War II. Rather, they forge bonds between audience and characters. As scholar Susan A. Bandy's writes, since cops are the recurring characters, only they are granted interiority, ambivalence, the ability to grow and change, and all the other markers of a fully realized character. In contrast, characters who commit crimes are typically flattened so as to be unrelatable. As a result, according to researcher Kathleen Donovan, these shows shape public opinion by depicting police officers as almost flawlessly effective, police use of force as valid, and by perpetuating the notion that crime is invariably on the rise. In other words, these narratives support the tough-on-crime agenda that has been the status quo in America for decades. When you lead with emotion, the politics will follow. Likewise, emotional connection is what makes Swift stand out amongst other iconic pop stars, who are often rendered unrelatable either by sheer fame or lyrics about million-dollar shopping sprees. It's what academic Margaret Rossman calls Swift's navigation of the public-private divide, and her willingness to offer intimate access to her deepest feelings and most painful lived experiences. In this way, Rossman writes, Swift recontextualizes her work as a labor of love, which allows her to elide capitalism by framing all she produces as emotion. By simulating the confessional intensity of a best friend sleepover, Swift obscures the inherent producer-consumer relationship she has with her fans. She's found unique ways to literalize her project of evoking a nostalgic girlhood. After sharing pages of her old diary, she told fans on Instagram Live,
I felt like I've really been sharing my life with you. I've always used kind of the metaphor of like, I open up my diary and share it with them. And the fact that they accept me for that is why we have such a strong bond. But this is taking it a step further.
That's why, ultimately, Taylor Swift's political power isn't the result of some deep state conspiracy. It's a consequence of her ability to articulate her own emotional life, and thus validate those of her audience. As Rossman explains, in sharing with her audience, Swift destigmatizes those moments of embarrassment and celebrates the expression of all emotions, from crying to raging. And when fans mirror those emotions back, when they say, "Scream for Swift at a concert," it constitutes what Rossman calls an affective citizenship, promoting the politic of the artist through their cries. And ultimately, Taylor Swift's political project, if there is one, is using the fervent emotional connection with her fans to further the economic engine that is Taylor Swift.
What's one song you wish you had written?
The Friends theme song because of those royalties.
Across the board, emotional connection is the most powerful way that the culture industry re-articulates the status quo as acceptable, even desirable, just as Adorno predicted. Barbie is feminist now because America Ferrera gave a tear-jerking performance.
I'm just so tired of watching myself and every single other woman tie herself into knots so that people will like us.
Cops are fun-loving, faithful stewards of public safety. Taylor Swift's success is a triumph of girlhood and neoliberalism in a time when both feel perilous to navigate. Basically, the world is good just as it is. So the idea that Taylor Swift could sway an election is less interesting in what it tells us about politics than what it tells us about entertainment. How even the most innocuous and seemingly apolitical cultural products can uphold existing systems by captivating the hearts, minds, and perhaps even voting decisions of the masses. Though at least it's created parking lot sharing economies for fans who can't get into her shows, so that's something. But what do you guys think? Was I brainwashed by Taylor Swift to believe I'm not being brainwashed by Taylor Swift? Does all cultural output serve a political purpose? And if so, how should we think about our cultural consumption? Let us know in the comments. And Swifties, please go easy on this millennial gal. I am terrified of you guys. Thanks so much for watching, and remember to like, subscribe, and comment as they all help us out. A special shout out to all of our patrons. If you're interested in supporting our channel while getting extra content like podcasts, research deep dives, and Michael's Philosophy Office Hours, check out the link in the description. I need to go start my new project, which is re-recording Helen's versions of all previously existing Wisecrack content, so I'll see you guys later. Peace.